The Deadly Assault mode has come under fire in more recent endgame discussions of Zenless Zone Zero following the release of the dual attacker team with Seed and Orphean Magus, the debut of the Defiler boss, and now with the beginning of a Rupture-focused meta with several new characters looking to fill up the archetype alongside the long since lonely Yi Zhuan. This is further compounded with newer enemies that are meant to not so subtly hard counter certain teams and specific characters, as well as hyper-specific buffs that only exist to gas up the new developing metas and leave everyone else out to dry. Now, obviously, I agree with others on opinions already made on how to improve Deadly Assault. Keep buff options general for as many teams as possible, cut down on invulnerability periods, and if you have to hard counter certain teams and characters, don't go overboard with it. Like I said, I'll get to talking about that at a later date. My focus today is on implementing a completely different approach to fixing Deadly Assault, improving the scoring system through more player options. To cut to the chase, the ZZZ team should add an Expert Mode toggle that comes with a score multiplier. Since the release of Threshold Simulation, the idea of increasing the base score multiplier of Deadly Assault similar content is now on the table for discussion. More specifically, this modifier I am conceptualizing would do two things: disable enemy flash telegraphs, and a moderate increase to enemy damage. As of right now, the disabling of flashes is only present in higher battle tower floors as well as higher difficulty modifiers in both old and new Hollow Zero content. During my time away from content creation, I've reached over 100 floors in the vanilla battle tower and have recently reached legendary status in the limited time battle tower. And after adjusting to no flashes and disabling my damage numbers on the user interface, I've had a change of heart about the modifier and actually enjoy the challenge. Now, disabling flashes and increasing damage for a base score multiplier would do a few positive things. 1. It encourages players to actually learn the fights. A good RPG or action RPG allows for players to customize their approach to completing battles by balancing their resource investment with their skill expression. I think it would be really cool if the score multiplier allowed your above average player to hit the 20,000 score requirement for S rank within the 2.5 minute mark. But their margin of error during that time is much smaller than what we have now, and then they have to survive the remaining time with at least one character left alive or risk a game over. 2. Defense agents will go up in value. Because of the higher damage, players can't afford to just tank hits carelessly or rely on non-defensive healing to survive the fight, such as Astra Yao and Pan Yu's ultimates. I don't want anyone saying Pan Yu's a defense agent. He is a support agent and you know it. You wouldn't call a bicycle a car just because someone welded a license plate to it. Defense agents and a couple other non-defense agents like Sokaku only consume 1 assist point when defending against any attack, regardless of the strength of the move. This would raise the value of said agents over those who consume 2 in the same circumstances. This would also greatly bolster the value of someone like Caesar on a player's account. For a while now, Caesar has been suffering amidst all the insane buffing of support agents with no real content for her team shield to thrive in outside of the battle tower. Caesar would provide a level of comfort to players who make the occasional mistake in the scenario of mistiming a dodge or defensive assist because of the aforementioned removal of flashes, but the damage increase would also prevent bad players from abusing Caesar's shield, as they would be eating through her energy faster than she can generate it. And because of the score multiplier I stated before, it should help to compensate for Caesar's shortcomings in offering more damage, as that can be made up for by easing up on the punishment of playing too aggressively. There is of course the matter of agents potentially dying during a mistimed swap on account of the exiting agent losing Caesar's shield and getting hit in the 1 to 2 seconds they need to leave the field, but that's a topic for another day. And 3, Hoyoverse would need to put more effort into how they design their bosses. For a little while now, there have been several enemies in ZZZ as a whole that lack clear audio or visual tells for what attack they're about to perform. Having an option to turn off flash telegraphs for additional points be something that is encouraged of for more hardcore players would ideally push Hoyoverse towards designing their bosses with more clear indications of when to brace for an attack. Enemies like the Unknown Corruption Complex, the Typhoon Destroyer, and both versions of Pompeii wouldn't have too much of a problem in this regard, as all the moves that can be parried have very obvious windups, and the bosses themselves are quite large. However, bosses such as Notorious Marionette, Miasma Priest, and the Defiler might be problematic in this regard because of their smaller models being harder to read during ZZZ's very flashy combat, or occasionally act in an erratic and unpredictable fashion. There is also the matter of bosses like the notorious Dead-End Butcher, which frequently use attacks that cannot be defensive assisted against that are not distinct enough from the ones that can. I don't think it's unfair of me to say that there is a couple of moves on almost every boss in ZZZ that could be designed better, but because of the existence of flash telegraphs, Hoyoverse may not feel compelled to improve them because of this band-aid solution that's been in place for a while now. Hopefully, by normalizing the idea of playing ZZZ without flash telegraphs, future bosses will have more thought put into designing visual clarity of their movements. I'm sure there might be one or two more things I could add to this possible solution, but that is all the major improvements I could see from an implementation of this system for now. I find it very off-putting that your typical endgame content in gacha games never sees players actually being put at risk of dying, and the only real point of failure in these modes is watching the timer tick over beyond the max reward threshold. Of course, I wouldn't limit this idea to just Deadly Assault, but for now, it seems the most easily translatable to Deadly Assault in due part because it has a scoring system. But if it could be retooled to work in Shiyu Defense or future Threshold simulation content, I'd be all for that too. If Zenless Zone Zero is supposed to have a reputation for being a gacha game with a higher skill ceiling than the competition, then players should be given the opportunity to go the extra mile and play the game with the training wheels off and be rewarded appropriately for it. Players should not be bound by the restrictions of the genre, but rather the restrictions of their own skill expression.